All right, great. Good morning. My name is Godwill. I use he, they pronouns, and I will be moderating this session for you guys this morning, which is entitled Flourishing in Contentious Times. So first off, we'd like to thank you guys for attending the inaugural Mental Health and Wellbeing Summit, which offers workshops and activities that allow for students to reflect on their own mental and physical health. And before we continue, I invite us to take a moment to reflect on the land which we currently reside. If you're in Madison like I am this morning, we're actually guests on the ancestral home of the Ho-Chunk Nation. The University of Wisconsin-Madison occupies Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Bejoke since immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state government repeatedly but unsuccessfully sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations in Wisconsin. So let's please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that brings us here together today. And please join us in uncovering such truths every day. Next, I would like to thank the professional interpreting enterprise for providing interpretation and captioning, the Wisconsin Union Campus Events Service for producing this event. The closed captioning button will appear for you guys in the toolbar at the bottom of the Zoom screen if you would like to use that. And furthermore, we're gonna have a Q&A section towards the end of this presentation. And there is a Q&A tool in the Zoom toolbar that will be open and should be used to post any questions you guys have throughout the presentation or towards the end of the presentation. And then my colleague, Jada Headley, will be monitoring those questions for us throughout the presentation. So now I would like to introduce our session speaker, Dr. Tony Chambers, who will lead this session, Flourishing in Contentious Times. Tony Chambers is the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Innovation at the Center for Healthy Minds, and also the Senior Lecturer in Counseling Psychology, co-teaching the course, The Art and Science of Human Flourishing. Dr. Chambers has served as a faculty and senior administrator in higher education for nearly 40 years. Most recently, Dr. Chambers retired as a department chair and professor in higher education from the University of Toronto. Dr. Chambers has spent his career studying and teaching in the area of college student learning and development. His work at the Center for Healthy Minds involves working to transform the activities, practices of the center to be responsive to, respectful, and reflective of the lives and experiences of a diverse population. Take it away, Dr. Chambers.
Thanks so much, Godwill. I really appreciate you and appreciate Jada Headley for joining this group to share with you for a brief period of time some of the ways in which we could flourish in contentious times. I want to say good morning to everybody and also appreciate the multiple host of this summit, and congratulate you all on pulling this off at this particular time in our history and time in the lives of our college students. And thank all of you who chose to spend time with us on this beautiful Friday morning instead of being outside roaming around and frolicking in the near spring environment. How we'd like to use this brief time with you all this morning. These are a few of the things we like to do. I have a few comments that I'd like to share with you all. and maybe a couple of thoughts, maybe more than a couple of thoughts, to jumpstart a dialogue that I'm hoping we'd have during the Q&A portion. My commitment is to make sure we have time during the Q&A portion to hear what you all are most interested in, and for us to share any perspective that's helpful to anyone out there who wants to engage in a conversation about flourishing in contentious times. So hopefully we'll have about 15 minutes or so at the end. There are many resources from each of you out there who are aware of ways in which students of color in particular can be supported during these very difficult times at UW as well as beyond UW. I encourage you to post those resources in the chat space, and we'll try to collect all of those resources at the end and make them available broadly through the sponsors of this summit. So make sure if you hear anything or know anything that you care to share that would be beneficial to folks to deal with flourishing in these times, please post it. So the topic here is flourishing in contentious times, with the specific attention to the experience of students of color in predominantly white higher education institutions. There are things that are helpful, hopefully, for anyone listening, but the target of this particular session, brief session, is on the experiences and lived experiences, lives of students of color and Indigenous and other students, Black students, and PWIs. Well, let me just say, first it should be said that I'm not just referring, when I talk about contentious times, I'm not just referring to the past year or the past 4 years. I'm referring to this history of contentious times, specifically for people of color in this society as well as many other societies around the world. Many of the things that we're experiencing right now are a version of things that we've all known and experienced for generations. So acknowledge that when we talk about contentious times, we're not talking about now, we're talking about the history of contentious times. And by flourishing in these contentious times, I'm not referring to some formulaic 7 steps to a good life or a one-size-fits-all sort of notion. What we're doing in this session is inviting each of you into a lifelong work of knowing and re-knowing yourselves and choosing and constantly re-choosing your paths to the self you want to become. Okay, so now all of that language was pretty abstract. And the shorthand of all of that language is that you're the only one who knows what it means for you to flourish. You are the only one who knows. And flourishing for you may or will change over time. It's not stagnant, it's quite dynamic. And it will change under different conditions and for different reasons throughout life. So accept that we're not talking about a moment in time or an episode, and we're not talking about contentious times as a static moment, episode in time. It's contentious over historical periods, and it's flourishing through various conditions. Let me just say before we get started about this course that we're teaching. It's called The Art and Science of Human Flourishing. And I had the pleasure this past semester of facilitating one of the small sections in the course that had students from underrepresented backgrounds, mostly first-generation students, low-income students, and students of color, to wrestle with some of the constructs that we talk about when we talk about flourishing in the course. It's for first-term incoming freshmen to the university. We had about 150 students in the total course. And we go through many issues and many ingredients of what may or may not constitute the concept of flourishing for young people at this particular time. It's all evidence-based. And we had a team of faculty members and staff supporting the course. We had large group sessions, we had small group sessions, and we had journaling, and we started every large session with a meditative practice a contemplative practice. And the course was quite outstanding. We'll do it every fall. It's being offered this summer in a different format. I'll be also teaching a FIG as a part of the course this coming fall. So if anybody's interested in that, please check with your advisors and see where we can go from there. The course is quite outstanding. So let me start off by providing a few thoughts that could hopefully jumpstart our conversation during the Q&A period. And hopefully will help you all continue these discussions beyond this particular session or beyond the summit. So, and there's just a few of these, and I think I am going to use a screen share so that you can actually see what it is that I am doing. Cool. This was a first for me. All right. So when we talk about flourishing in contentious times, these are some of the things that I like for us to at least think about for a brief period of time as we move into our discussion, as well as after the discussion for you all to think about. We need to acknowledge that many of the experiences that students have, particularly in predominantly white institutions, are shared and sometimes even experienced more intensely by faculty and staff of color at predominantly white institutions. So it's a shared experience, and the common denominator is the cultural, racial backgrounds of those experiencing these types of things in predominantly white institutions. So you're not alone, you're not isolated. And there are people amongst you, those who are faculty in this space, those who are staff in this space who have similar experiences. So acknowledge that. It's also very important that there be an honest examination of how the culture of higher education, that is, how we structure courses, the expectations we have, the ways in which we deliver and expect knowledge to be digested and interpreted and made meaning of, and the ways in which learning and teaching happens, how all of that contributes to student well-being. And particularly when we talk about students of color, many of the things that happen in particularly predominantly white institutions may not feel natural or even be natural in terms of how information, how knowledge, and what knowledge is received and processed and made meaning of, as well as how this knowledge is applied in the real lived experiences of some folks, particularly, again, students of color. What you experience, this is really important because oftentimes students are told that, you're just making stuff up, or some version of you're making this up, and you're really not experiencing what you're experiencing. It's a gaslighting experience, right? You're not hallucinating when you have feelings about flourishing and survival and existing and progressing and learning in certain environments. It's real. You're not overreacting and you're not oversensitive. Be mindful of that. You are not hallucinating. What you're experiencing, or what you will experience, or what you have experienced is real. Listen to your own voice and the voices of those you trust and care about. All other things, all other voices, you can treat as pretty much background noise. Like, some of it might be valuable, but during contentious times, when anxiety is high, when frustration is high, when issues of safety and trust are elevated, treat, in some cases, all other sounds around you, all other voices around you as background noise. A few other things. And this is important too. And some of you all, we could talk about this at the end during the Q&A, but don't feel bad about dismissing those who harm you. Some of us have the tendency of trying to help people feel comfortable with us feeling uncomfortable. right? Whether those folks who harm us are doing it intentionally or not, don't feel bad about just dismissing them, right? Because it's about your safety. It's about your flourishing. It's about your security. So don't feel bad about not making others feel good about you feeling bad. Next, you get to choose your allies. I've heard it said many times by people who have gone through various training approaches and have anointed themselves as allies of certain populations. They don't get to choose who the ally is. You get to choose who your allies are. And you could be extremely discerning about who you want as your allies because someone has gone through an experience, a knowledge building experience, or some sort of transformative educational experience does not allow them the privilege of anointing themselves as an ally. You get to determine that. It's important to see yourself in positive others. And again, you get to decide this, who those positive others are. No one gets to tell you who a positive other is. You decide that. And it's important to acknowledge that some others who may have similar experiences as yours, others see themselves in the best of you. You may not know how other people are looking at you and how other people are seeing you and your best, but know that there are people who are seeing you and seeing the best of you. And in some cases, it allows them to flourish because of that observation of your best. So know that your best is being attended to. And finally, it's not your responsibility to create a safe space for those who are already safe. I don't know if too much more needs to be said about this, but oftentimes, again, we take responsibility. You take responsibility for creating a safe space for others. In fact, many training sessions oftentimes start off by saying, we want to create a safe space for everyone who is here. Now, while that's an important guideline for most spaces, for those who don't feel safe in the first place, for those who don't feel trusting or trusted or respected in the first place, it is not your responsibility to create a space for other people to feel safe when in fact you don't feel safe. So take that off the plate, try to find your own space of safety and live into that space as opposed to exerting extra energy to make other people feel safe. Some of these are quite challenging, so we'll get to them in a little bit. Finally, I wanted to give you all some tools that most of us have used for generations in order to flourish. These are things that our ancestors, those throughout our lineage, have applied in various forms throughout history in order to survive in some cases, but in most cases to flourish and become our better self over and over again and redefine ourselves over and over again from the perspective of flourishing. We oftentimes use humor, not to laugh at ourselves, but to laugh or to find humor in the circumstances in which others have created around us. Let me be clear about that. It's not to laugh at the challenging circumstances we're in, because those are not to be laughed at, they're quite serious. But we find some humor in how others have responded and how others have created and responded to circumstances. Again, it's not a laughing itself. In order for us to survive and oftentimes flourish, sometimes we have to find the insanity and silliness within some of the things that are occurring. And we can laugh. Laugh physiologically oftentimes changes our physiology so that we can cope and sometimes even flourish. And most of us do it to some degree. Another thing is we've learned how to be still. We don't have to engage in constant motion and constant activity. We could learn how to be still and observe, learn how to be still and find our own center and ourself. And that's important. Some of you participated in the previous session with Dr. John Dunn, who talked about meditation. Now, I do want to say that meditation from an Eastern Buddhist perspective is quite powerful. I also want to acknowledge that many of us, through our various faith traditions, through our various ways of relating to nature and other things, are also engaged in meditative still practices. And I don't want to elevate one of those practices over another, and wanted to respect all the things that we do in order to find that center, in order to find ourselves, in order to sustain ourselves, in order to allow ourselves to flourish. So recognize that we all engage in some form of stillness and engage and continue engaging in that. Next, we are at the University of Wisconsin. We are at Madison, Wisconsin, but some of us are not of these places. We are in these places and we are good citizens of the place, and we are taking advantage of all opportunities to learn and contribute to the learning environment and others' learning. And we don't necessarily have to be of these places. Our grounding has come from other places, right? Our hometowns, our families, our communities, sometimes faraway places that we've never been, could be ancestral. We are of these places. Our values and sense of consciousness and worldview may have come from other places. So we could be both at a place, but not of a place. I want to encourage all of you to remember to reset each day. And I do mean that quite literally. You can't forget what happened yesterday or history, but we have to intentionally, to survive in order to, and as well as to thrive and flourish, we have to intentionally step into each day as if it's a new day. Otherwise, the accumulation of trauma, the accumulation of anxiety, of stress will do us in. Reset as best we can each day in order for us to flourish within these types of environments and within consistently contentious times, because they will be here every day. So if we can reset every day, I think we have a better chance of flourishing. Listen, feel, and trust. Keep your ears open. And I don't mean just for what people say, but how they say it and what they don't say. Listen to what you say and what you don't say. Listen to what your heart says and doesn't say. Feel, know in your body what your body is telling you, because it does tell you stuff. So you feel it, you listen to it, and above all, trust your instinct, trust your gut, trust your feeling, trust the little voice inside of you, the little soft voice inside of you and what it's telling you. Trust it, because it's sending messages all the time. And through that, I think there's a better opportunity for folks to survive, thrive, and flourish in any kind of times. Now, this is something that I try to convince my own children to do, and it might be counterintuitive for some folks, but acknowledge out loud every morning. Stand in front of the mirror if you really want to be dramatic about it. I mean, I tend to be dramatic at times about this, but acknowledge out loud how beautiful, how brilliant, and how right you are every morning and every night before you go to bed. Live out loud. Don't hide it. Right? Sometimes people talk about having to put on a suit of armor before going out into certain spaces to protect yourself. I think one of the other ways to protect yourself and also open a space for you to flourish in all times is to acknowledge some of the truths that you know, but oftentimes others try to have you hide. You are beautiful. I am beautiful. You're brilliant beyond anybody's imagination, beyond even your own imagination. And you are right. There's nothing about you that's wrong. And you could say that to yourself every morning in the mirror, every night before you go to sleep. And you could live out loud that way every minute of the day. So I think with those things, again, I wanted to leave most time for the end for us to have a conversation. I'm going to end my comments by, again, thanking you all for being here. And I'm looking forward to hearing anything that you all have to share, or any questions or concerns or ideas that you might have regarding ways in which we flourish during contentious times, as well as during all other times. Thank you so much for listening. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Now, it's time for us to have a discussion. And how is this going to do? Are we putting stuff in the Q&A box, or are we doing stuff in the chat box? And Jada, you are going to mine and excavate all of that stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that was the plan. So any of the participants should feel free to use the Q&A tool in the toolbar to submit any questions, comments, things you want clarified, and yeah.
And by the way, there's 3 of us who are serving as a panel to field and respond. So you could direct any question to any of us or all of us, or comment. And I also want to encourage you all again to put in the chat box any resources that you're aware of that can support flourishing for, particularly for students of color, but for any student. Okay. Okay, don't be shy, folks. Q&A. Of course, could you please elaborate? Okay, Jada, are you seeing these?
Yes, I am. Okay, so the first question is to you, Dr. Chambers. You mentioned a bit of the course. Could you please elaborate on it a little bit, and what's the goal of the course, and what are your intentions, and who are you trying to reach?
Good question. The course is a course that was developed, 5 or so years ago, and I could be off on my timing, in a collaboration between the University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of Virginia, and Penn State University, faculty from each of those units. And it was developed based on research and evidence in the field, looking at what factors actually contribute or could contribute to flourishing, human flourishing. And over the course of some time, each of these institutions developed these singular courses with similar curriculum to offer to students and explore some of these issues. There's like 12 or so areas that focus on different elements of flourishing. And all of the institutions initially focused on incoming first-year students, because the sense was, particularly as it relates to the developmental stages that students are in, that the transition from high school to college can be very daunting. And many of the challenges that students experience, they experience it during their first semester. So it was the right time for this kind of course, and the focus of this kind of course to be delivered to that age group. And that many of the things that happen in the course would hold students in steady steed throughout their academic and beyond, academic career and beyond. So, and the other part of that was that the course would introduce, as part of it, a contemplative practice that students could that can continue to practice throughout their life, but certainly throughout their academic career. The third thing that was critical for the course was the use of a tool, an app called the Healthy Minds Program, which was developed by Healthy Minds Innovation at the center and in collaboration with the Center for Healthy Minds here at the University of Wisconsin, that collects data on the use of meditative practices and the effects of those practices, certain effects on student behavior and student outcomes. So we were quite interested in how these practices, how this learning, how this kind of course, what kind of impact it had on students who were participating in the course. So that's the course. In general, we do 2 plenary sessions, 2 large group sessions for students each week, and 1 small group session of up to 25, 26 students, 6 or so sections of these 25 students. And we cover a range of things. We do an articulation and an examination of the topics. We do practices from various cultural backgrounds and perspectives. We engage in application of some of the topics to the personal lives and lived experiences of students. And I think Jada and Godwill can speak to some of that as well, since they both participated in the classes. And the course is a whole term course, and it's a 3-credit course, I think. I could be wrong, Jada. Yeah, 3-credit course. And it's cross-listed in 3 different departments. It's counseling psych, ed psych, and Asian studies. It's well taken up. Again, 150 students this year, and it's grown. And next year we'll probably do more students. And it's offered this summer. So that's the structure of the course. What we're hoping to do is provide students with knowledge and skills to practice and move toward a more flourished life, not only while they're students, but beyond. Currently, we're addressing issues, I think, in addition to what's happening on campus with health services and other resources. We're assisting with helping students with some of the challenges of mental health and emotional challenges that have been provided or present during the pandemic and during other types of challenges, social challenges. So I think it's providing a lot of outcomes or a lot of support for students currently. Jada, Godwill, do you want to answer? You want to respond? Give anything else to that?
Not directly to the question that we just went off on elaborating on the class itself, but there is this question here from Miyamoto asking about some takeaways the students had from the course, and that just got me thinking. One of the biggest takeaways I heard most students talk about after completing the course was walking away with kind of these like real tangible tools and resources and communities that they could utilize to help them like navigate this this like pandemic anyways. And I think the word like pandemic could be like synonymous to just stress in general, because we're not always going to be in this pandemic. But I think this course does a great job of giving students the tools that may have not been so apparent to them before to just navigate through like any type of stressor, or doesn't even necessarily have to be stress. It could just be about like navigating how to be compassionate or accepting. And I think that's a great takeaway, but that's just something I would like to, or I wanted to share.
Yeah, I can definitely add to that and say that because we have another question saying that they would like to hear our experiences, and because they're kind of so similar, and I have to completely agree with Godwill. I think the best thing that I learned from the class is that the tools that they give they're guides, but you come up with the ways to kind of flourish yourself, and you come up with the ways to improve your own life. And I think it's something of taking control. So even though it's a class and you're answering questions and you're doing journal prompts, it's mostly reflection. And in those reflections, you learn more about yourself, and you learn more about the ways that you can help yourself. And so, yeah. Next question we have is from Beth. she says, I am touched by your encouragement of students to view themselves as strong and capable. How do we create classrooms that go beyond creating a safe space to foster students' strengths and believe in their abilities?
That's a wonderful question. You know, one of the things that that I mentioned early on, and I think I need to revisit, is how faculty and staff, actually model these kind of things in front of students. You know, we were told early on in our education that, you know, that parents are the first teachers. And we're the first teachers because we model these behaviors. And when we get to college, oftentimes the walls go up between faculty, staff, and students, right? And faculty and staff are oftentimes seen as distant from and not a part of a community of learners. So when faculty and staff can model certain types of strength and strong behaviors, as well as some weak behaviors, we're not perfect, nobody's perfect. And to demonstrate and model the whole person, I think students can pick that up and run with it, and also have the permission or sense of permission in order to grow, make mistakes, take challenges, take chances, and grow from those, from winning and losing in those chances. How else we can do it? I think it has to be a consistent process. I think we need to say out loud, to live out loud, you know, our love and commitment to our students. And I don't take that lightly. I mean, some may call it pretty sappy, but I think we probably need to say to the people that have entrusted their learning to us, entrusted their lives in many respects to us, that we care about them in multiple ways, not just about their cognitive development, but their psychosocial development, their environmental development, their emotional development. We, as faculty, and those of you who are students as well, need to live out loud and say, we do care. We love you. We want you to learn. We respect how you learn. We respect that you have knowledge. And we know that your knowledge is going to be helpful to other people. So we need to be really intentional and verbal and straight out with some of our strengths, weaknesses, and care that we have for students. What else do we have up there?
We're waiting on more questions to come in, but in the meantime, do we have any questions that we could possibly ask the attendees to kind of, you know, generate their minds?
Yeah. You know, I'm curious, you know, what was missing for you this semester? What would you have liked to have gotten in order to to strengthen your life, in order to make you feel like, yeah, I can make it? What did you need that you didn't get?
Great question.
And I guess feel free to answer this question in the chat as well. We don't have to use the Q&A function for it.
And if I could also say, for those of you who aren't students, if you're professionals, you were a student at some point in time, I'm assuming. So what did you need that you didn't get? And what did you observe from students this semester as a professional that you don't think they got?
All right, so the first message we have in our Q&A box is that it has been difficult to learn in lab settings because we cannot interact closely with each other.
Yeah, that's a challenge, I have to say. And as a person who really appreciates high touch, that is being in the same space and being able to engage people face to face, this semester or this past year has been extremely challenging. And for some people, it's affected how they learn, right? One of the things that I'm hoping that we'll learn from this year's experience and all of us being online and all of us learning, how to be online, and some of us being quite successful at it. I have to say our course, I think, was different because we were online. Hopefully we've all learned that there are multiple ways for people to learn. Some people learn better when they're virtual, right? Even in small groups. Labs would be a little difficult unless it's, social science lab. But there are ways in which we all could learn in different formats. Some people prefer face-to-face. I do. Some people prefer virtual. Some people prefer lectures. Some people prefer small discussions. So we all have different learning styles. But this semester or this year has posed a challenge and an opportunity for us to get creative about learning in higher education, as well as in K through 12 education for sure. So think of it that way. Think of it that way. Just be creative in accepting that we all do different things. We learn different ways.
Yeah, I completely agree. And our next question is, would you be willing to share how your flourishing has changed over time? And what are some examples of the commitments you made to flourishing at different points in your life? That's a great question.
Oh, is that to me or was that to Jada? I think, Jada, you ought to answer that one.
Wow.
I'm your biggest fan. Go get it.
Yeah, I really had to think about this question. One thing I will say is when the time I started the class and all throughout the end, the biggest takeaway, I think, or just how it changed is seeing how much I was just able to open up in a sense. Because me, I think one of the things I always talk about when referring to this class is the journal prompts that we got. And I think you really put in, like, you get what you put into the class. And so at the beginning, I was very hesitant. I was very kind of like, I didn't really want to share too much because you think it's just a course. You really just need to answer questions and, pass. And so I kind of changed my perspective in a way. And I said, okay, well, this class isn't necessarily for them, it's mainly for me. So what did I really want to get out of it? And what were some ways that I could change? So, I ended up writing essays instead of journal prompts, just reflection on my life. And I think even right now, even though I'm not in the class anymore, sometimes I just go about my days and, you just kind of learn how to adapt to your surroundings, especially. And I think that's something I learned the most in this class. And sometimes I just see things in my life or something may come up and it's not really what I planned on, or it maybe has not gone the way it has. And I just kind of think about concepts that I learned in the class that I didn't even force myself to think about. You kind of just learn it and you just adopt it along the way. And so even along my day, I'm just thinking about gratefulness. And then I think about Professor Chambers. I'm like, I'm grateful for this. And it's just sort of just learning more about yourself and learning more about how you can help yourself, like I said before. And I think I just really had to commit to being more honest with myself and being more honest with the improvements that I wanted to make and make those improvements tangible and implement them every single day. So,
Thanks, Jada. God will. Do you want to respond to that one?
I'll say something quick. Something new, anyways, that I've been doing that relates to my flourishing. It's something similar to what you were kind of mentioning towards the end of your presentation, along the lines of like welcoming each day as it is like a new day, something like that. I've literally, this was like my New Year's resolution to just take it day by day and focus on each day independently of the next and the one before it. So just focus on having like the 24 hours I have in the day or whatever it is, just focus on having a good day. And then the next day having another good day, and then another one, and then after 7 days, like I'll have a good week, and after 4 weeks I'll have a good month. And even if I only have 5 good days out of the 7 day week, I consider that a good week. And doing that, I can like say this entire year I have not had a bad week. And I think that's amazing, and I'm going to continue doing that, because I think we do get caught up in the overthinking of, like, just because there's so much uncertainty, like even thinking about next week. I'm an undergraduate student, so just by nature, there's already a lot waiting for me next week that I need to attend to. But how can I have a good Friday if I'm like worried about next Monday? Is what I've been, I don't know, focusing with and grappling with and trying to work into my flourishing.
Thanks, God. Well, I want to be both of you all when I grow up. So for sure. Listen, I know we're running out of time, but the thing that I've learned over a long history is to be gentle with myself. You know, I make mistakes, right? I question myself. I get into the cycle of thinking that I'm not enough. And the thing that keeps me moving forward over time is to be gentle with myself, to sit still and appreciate the gifts, to sit still and recognize the need to learn certain things and to be grateful for things, a lot of things, the need to ask for forgiveness, the need to recognize that around me that gives me strength and light, right? To love the things I love and let them know that I love the things that I love. And, you know, simple as that, that has contributed to what I consider moments of flourishing. Simple as that. So we should probably think about moving us into some sort of closure. And I think, God will, are you shutting us down, or Jada, are you shutting us down on this one?
Yeah, just give me one quick second. I can wrap things up for us.
Let me just say something before you wrap us up. This format is really weird. I want to see everybody's faces, right? And I said that out loud. And I have this bad habit of recognizing folks and telling you how good you look. So for those of you who I could see, y'all really look good. And I hope you feel as good as you look. So for those I can't see, I hope you're looking good too, and hope you're feeling as good as you look. So God will, I see Lance going to shut us down. Please do.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you all for attending, and make sure to visit wellbeingsummit.wis.edu for the other events throughout the day, which you can join using the Zoom link for all the sessions. And I think there is actually a session later this afternoon at 12:05 that you guys can drop into. I believe it is some type of yoga class, so that will be interesting. And then beyond the summit, I would invite you guys to try to put your mental health plan into practice next week as part of a grassroots campaign to promote self-care and community well-being amongst all our students, faculty, and staff. We're calling this collective effort Take Care UW. You can find related activities and recorded sessions from the Mental Health and Wellbeing Summit on our event website, and join the conversation on social media using the hashtag TakeCareUW. And yes, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you.